we had the opportunity, you know, to ask him many things. And of course I did ask him about the planet. And he said there will be physical repercussions owing to man's growing selfishness, minor adjustments to the planet, and a certain clear-out. And but no nuclear, even though it might seem dicey. He said no nuclear. And I asked him about UFOs and whether they were the tremendous amount of activity in that field was to help the planet, you know. And he said yes, and they have much work to do, he said. And we, for the sake of other people, we asked about mediumship. Did he approve of mediumship? You know, of course, he knew about our background. But we wanted to ask for the sake of other people, you know, who wondered whether he approved of communication with the next world. And so we asked him that if medium was honest and a pure channel, you know, was that wrong? And he said, of course not, you know, in very decisive terms. And we really asked that question for the sake of other people who, you know, had wondered. Ron, of course, asked him I asked him, of course, about Jesus.
Yes, would you like to repeat that?
Whether Jesus actually died on the cross, or whether he was, you know, 3 hours on the cross nobody died in 3 hours on the cross, you know, sometimes it took 4 days. And of course he was an Essene, and the Essene Brotherhood were around him. And after 3 hours he was unconscious, but of course he was not dead. And that's why Joseph of Arimathea, who of course was an Essene, rushed to Pilate to ask whether he could take him. I think I never felt Pilate really wanted him to die. So he said, yes, yes, take him. Because all people usually who were crucified were put in a common grave, you see. And so, you know, they got him down very, very, very carefully. And Nicodemus, who was the medicine man in the Essene Brotherhood, he had this wonderful herbal mixture, and I always used to wonder in the Bible where it says Nicodemus brought 100 pounds of ointment. I thought, 100 pounds, which of course they anointed with him with and gave to him and so on. And and then there are so many books, of course, that have been rather well, when the church comes across all this evidence, you see, they try and hide it up or burn it or whatever, you know. But there is so much documented evidence, and that he then later, of course, went back to the lost tribes of Israel in the other parts of, back to India and Afghanistan, what is now Afghanistan, and Persia, all these places. And then there were many, many Jews also in Kashmir, and where he ended up. And I asked Swami, you see, was it the physical body of Jesus that came out of the tomb, or a materialized spirit body? And he said, oh, no materialized spirit body, the physical. And I said, well, then did he then travel back to the east, where he had gone, of course, during all those earlier what's called the 18 lost years? I mean, he was traveling, and he stayed several years in Himish monastery in Ladakh, you know, in and so he said, oh yes, yes, and then he went even as far as Calcutta and Malaysia, he said. And I said, well then is it Jesus who is buried in the Rosary shrine in Kashmir, in Srinagar? And he said, yes, yes, yes. And of course Ron was very, very keen to ask him. He always remembered a talk he'd given one Christmas, where Swami had said that things had been manipulated and cut out of the Bible and so on, and that one day Jesus was standing in a field with his disciples and among some sheep, and he had said, "He who sent me will come again, and his name will be Truth, and he will wear a red robe and have a crown of hair." And so Ron wanted to ask Swami this, and he said, then was it you, Swami, who sent Jesus into incarnation? And Swami, we were sitting here on the sofa. Swami had his chair drawn right up to us. It was just me and Ron and Swami. And he had his elbows on his elbows on his knees, and his eyes were about that much from ours, you know. And he was just looking with those wonderful eyes, you know, into ours, answering questions. And when Ron said to him, "Swami, was it you then that sent Jesus into incarnation?" And he just said, "Yes." And so, just yes. And then Ron said, "Well then, in that case you are what Christians really, would call the cosmic Christ, consciousness, the cosmic Christ." And so he just said, "Yes." And the way he said it, you know, it just so simply, you know, just not taking his eyes from ours. He just said yes. You know, that we were absolutely, it's hard to describe our feelings, you know. So, those interviews were wonderful, wonderful.